Hello, friends. Welcome back to another edition of No Cap Room here on the Ball Don't Lie podcast network. My name is Jake Fisher. I am the senior NBA reporter at Yahoo Sports, and I'm joined, as always, by my man, your man, everyone's man, senior NBA writer at Yahoo Sports, Dan Devine. What's up?
Jake, I 12 hours ago saw you at Madison Square Garden in the bowels of the arena, and now you are where exactly?
I'm in Phoenix. I'm
Phoenix,
across the street
Arizona.
from the Footprint Center. I have a strain of the throat. My eyes are barely open. But yeah, the playoffs are going. Our editors told me to get off my butt and get on the road, so I'm doing it. And I wanted to... Honestly, I went to the Garden expecting to see the Garden burn down from all the white hot heat and from a ravenous, depraved, disappointed Knicks fan base. But a big win, and I was stuck. I don't know about how you made it down to the post-game media path, but I was stuck in a sea of lubricated Italians shouting, "Let's go Knicks." And it was a moment.
Italians. I love this.
It was a moment where you're like, this is what sports are all about. This is what it's about.
Yeah, I will say I was in that a little bit too, and it started with moving down the concourse to a lot of loud Knicks in 7 chants.
Yes.
Should we tell the fine people of the No Cap Room listening audience what the file name was for your game story as you were putting it all together last night?
The file name was Heat and 5.
Right.
That's what
as you were writing next to me, I'm like, it's called Heat and 5, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's what sometimes. Look, I am an unbiased observer of the NBA. I truly am. But then you start to get a little swayed by matchups you want to see and storylines you want to see unfold, and like a Jimmy Butler versus Joel Embiid. Although I'm going to make a shout out to our friends at the Rights to Ricky Sanchez. I wonder who will haunt Philly fans more, particularly Michael Levine, Jimmy Butler or Hayward Highsmith. Who's to say? Who's to say? But that's the conference finals matchup. We're recording this Thursday, later afternoon than we usually do. So we're not really going to be getting into Philly Boston tonight or much of Denver Phoenix, the game that I'm in town for. But that's a series that I'm like kind of hoping to juju into existence. It would also make very easy for me to cover from Philadelphia, and then have some family connections to the Miami area. So yeah, that's what I was rooting for.
I was going to say this is less you thinking about from the wizened storyteller perspective, like what's the matchup this is you want to go home and you want to go see family and travel to Miami. Like these are the kind of the two, like this is what I think people have to understand when they think about the grand conspiracy theories of media and who controls what and who's looking for what. It's a little bit less biased toward making sure you have X, Y, or Z big markets in, and a little more biased toward ease of travel and outcomes places you want to wind up spending a week when you need to in May and June, which is why I know everyone got furious about Cleveland for so many years, and then resulting in Cavs fans getting so furious at everybody. And then you have a real a closed loop system of everyone being angry, which is really, as we get back to what you were talking about in your travels with lubricated Italians, really what sports is all about. It's how can everyone be as mad as possible all the time.
There you go. Well, I was up late and then very early to catch a flight here. You were up very late. Did you get to watch the Warriors coming back and staving off elimination from the Chase Center? Because I did not, but I caught some clips this morning and I have some thoughts. Not too many, but I want to yield the floor to the man who was up till how late last night filing however long of a godforsaken recap that you put together.
Who among us? Godforsaken recap. I'd like to think it wound up a little better than Godforsaken. Who can remember when I finished and filed? I know it went up around 3. I know one of the wild. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and the 5-year-old apparently insisted that I come in to go to say goodnight to her when I got in. And my wife was like, "Are you sure it's going to be very, very late?" She said, "Yes, I wanted to." So I went in at 3:15 in the morning and shook a 5-year-old awake just to go like, "Hey, the Knicks won. Good night." And and then she just rolled over and looked at me and smiled and said, "This is the latest I've ever been awake," and then went right back over and fell asleep. So not exactly waking up to see Santa Claus. It's waking up to see a bedraggled, godforsaken recapper at 3:15 in the morning. I did get to catch up on Warriors Lakers this morning, and the big thing, obviously, the number one thing, and we'll get into it, is just where Anthony Davis's health is moving forward after taking that big shot from Kevon Looney and having to leave the game and so on and so forth, which led to its own mushroom cloud out of nonsense and stuff. But the big thing, he's been the centerpiece of this entire series. What is Anthony Davis going to be? Is Anthony Davis going to be the best player on the floor, the decider in these matchups? And when he can control what Golden State's able to do defensively, limit their shot profile, make it harder for them to get to what they want to get to, Golden State has a hard time scoring. And the Warriors were able to find ways to move him around last night, putting him in more action, getting access to him in the pick and roll and kind of moving him out of the way so they can attack the paint. And that's a real problem for the Lakers. So moving past even just, if he's available, obviously whether he's available or not is the biggest question. But if he is, if Golden State's able to continue to move him around and away to sideline him, there's not a whole lot of secondary rim protection there. So I think that's kind of the battleground to watch moving forward into Game 6.
As I was on the subway heading home from MSG, I'm scrolling through a couple of the tweets on the timeline just to kind of get a sense of the first half recap. And there was so much about where Golden State was trying to draw AD on the floor, and all the attention about their entire offensive attack being like concerned about where this guy's just standing on top of hardwood. And I thought to myself, like, I can't even, as I close your eyes and think of Joel Embiid flying in at the middle of nowhere to block. I forget who it was, either Tatum or Brown in Game 5.
Yeah, the chase down on Jaylen Brown.
Just an insane feat. And like, and he's been doing that in the postseason for however many years now. Giannis is Giannis. I can't recall a discourse or a discussion as loud and as warranted, it seems, about one team doing whatever they can to take out one guy as a defensive weapon. Like, maybe there was a lot of discussion about, the Kawhi matching LeBron minutes back in 2014, but I mean, the fact that the Warriors are supposed to be, and I'm not saying they're not, this like well-oiled offensive juggernaut that has a million different options. Like Steve Kerr said it in his post-game press conference about the hammer play at the end of Game 4 that didn't work, about how, like, we had 4 or 5 different options, off of it. That's kind of been their bread and butter, right? We've got our split cuts and we've got this and we've got that. And we've got counters to that counter. And like, it's all being boiled down, all that movement, all that free flowing, all that joy that has captured 4 titles. Like, it's just coming down to a bottleneck of like, how do we not go against Anthony Davis, which to me is like, I mean, take your hat off to the performance and the impact he's having on that side of the floor. I mean, we'll get to his health in a second here, but to me, like, I don't recall these Warriors having to play such a chess match of trying to move the queen of the chessboard like completely in the opposite corner of where their action is going.
Yeah, the player that sort of flashes to mind is Kawhi. You mentioned him in the matching up with LeBron minutes, but it might even have been after that, like a regular season thing that you would see more teams doing, is knowing that he was going to guard their best guy in those San Antonio years, just like sacrificing that, to extend the chess metaphor, like, we'll give you the pawn, like, we'll, move him away. And if we can like put Kawhi in isolation away from the play, knowing he's got to stick to that guy, then we can play 4-on-4 on the backside of it. And we feel like we've got some opportunities there. Memphis did this a little bit with AD in the first round. It's when they were able to get him matched up to Jaren Jackson Jr. and use him to space the floor. And that created more opportunities for them to get downhill. They were not as successful continuing to do it. And that's kind of been the adjustment matchup the last couple of games. Golden State had a ton of success in Game 4 in the first half. That's why they downshifted to Gary Payton II in the starting lineup, and they were running more pick and roll at AD, getting him involved in the action and away from the rim. Halftime, Darvin Ham switches the matchups, puts AD onto Wiggins as opposed to Gary Payton II. The Warriors seemed a little less comfortable with like Wiggins attacking in the short roll. Maybe Wiggins wasn't quite as aggressive as he needed to be in those 4-on-3s, allowed AD to stay closer to the rim, and they could still sag off of Gary Payton II as a non-shooter. And then Golden State goes back to it last night and just says kind of like, we're going to do it again and we're going to do it harder. And Wiggins is going to attack more. Whoever they had setting those screens for Steph or for Jordan Poole, whether it was Draymond or Wiggins or Kevon Looney, I think even Clay did once or twice last night. Those guys, they were involving AD into the action and then looking to play out of that. And they're just like LeBron as a low man rotating can still, he can blow up plays. He can take charges. He's been doing that more in the playoffs, but he's not the rim protector that AD is. There isn't anybody else on the roster that is. Jared Vanderbilt is a useful player, but not like a major rim protector as a secondary defender down there. So whenever they can get him away, it opens up so much more. And they were more attentive, like cutting along the baseline, Steph trying to drive to the rim, looking for the kind of like tic-tac-toe passes behind the play. And it's a testament to what AD has been and the level of defensive difference maker he is. But it's also, this is the Warriors saying, like, we're fighting for our lives. We can't just let the prospect of going at him deter us. We've just got to find a smarter way to do it. And it worked for them really well in Game 5. And the question is going to be, are they going to be able to get back to that in Game 6? And then moreover than that, is Anthony Davis going to be there in Game 6?
Yeah, he was minus 22 in 32 minutes, worst on the team. And his offense was good. So, like, that's a pretty telling piece of information, piece of the puzzle. You mentioned his status for Game 6, up in the air with a head injury that he sustained from some form of contact from the upper body of Kevon Looney. I hate when people are like, oh, I just got poked in the eye. Like, we don't, I mean, they're replays on the replays, but it's difficult. Like, it's difficult to decipher. I mean, we were there, and when Quentin Grimes had that crazy play where he banged knees with Bam Adebayo, and like until he said it post game when I asked him about it, not to put my chest out for asking about it, but I'm saying, like, if I didn't, I wouldn't have known he bumped his knee. I thought he twisted his ankle. Like, right. It's just difficult to parse through these things sometimes. But Chris Haynes is reporting that he's expected to play Game 6, and this isn't like will he feel up to it kind of thing, though. This is going to be concussion protocol. Will he be able to clear all the stuff?
Well, so that's it's not clear that it is, right? Because he left the game, and the reporting around it after the game, and our guy Vinny Goodwill was there, wrote a great game story for Yahoo Sports about it. It seems like the aftermath was not conclusive as like, did he go into the concussion protocol? Did they start doing those evaluations? And the expectation was morning after you would hear, is he going into the protocol? And the reporting from Chris Haynes suggests maybe not. Like, head injury expected to be available for Game 6, barring a setback. There was no line in there about he's in the protocol. So if once you actually enter the protocol, then yes, then there's these hoops you got to jump. Hoops you got to jump through makes it sound like it's a sort of a flippant thing. There are different barriers you have to go. Yeah, and sort of check marks that you've got to accumulate along the way to show that you're back at baseline level functioning, that you're not in any danger, et cetera, et cetera. And those are not time limited. That's like, it's whatever it needs to be. If you don't actually enter the protocol, you might not be subjected to those things. And so that's, I think, something that if you have some concerns about or some questions about, you're probably not alone. I think there's a lot of people, especially after watching Draymond clock his head on the floor in Game 4, get up looking like he was really the worse for wear, and then kind of just go right back in. If you're wondering why the application of those things seems to be a little uneven or inconsistent, you're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good pretty much breakdown of the confusion there. Because I got on my plane here. I thought he was in the protocol, and he's not officially there. So there you go. I think the last thing really to touch on this subject has kind of been the conversation around the injury. Just because you put it in our Slack here as we got ready to get recording here. Stephen A. Smith apparently apologized for comments he made that were, to use your word from earlier, potentially, I'm not saying Stephen A. Smith said this word, but just to paraphrase, a little too flippant about the severity of what things are here. I mean, Shaq and Kenny were giggling there, what's off on this in Studio J down in Atlanta. And I see why a lot of former players, I'm struck every time, man, where I call someone who was like a coach in the early 2000s who played in like the 80s or 90s and how much they're willing to just bang the cliche drum over and over again of like load management and back in my day and these guys are soft and whatever. Like, I totally see where that community would be coming from. It's I don't know. It's an interesting. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I'm gonna let you say whatever you want to say.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, so I didn't catch the Shaq and Kenny stuff live. I caught up to it later, and I wasn't watching Stephen A. Smith until it came across my timeline. But the response, a lot of it seemed to sort of be almost like a boy who cried wolf thing. Like, we see Anthony Davis go down so often. We see him, he picks up a knock, he writhes in pain. You wonder if he's going to be out for 2 weeks. He gets back up and then he's back in the game. He goes back to the locker room. He comes back out and he's fine. And so whatever the reason is for why that happens, whether it's a pain management level, issue for him, or he's actually hurting, but it just takes him a little while to get through it, or whatever the case may be, I think there is a tendency to kind of like, with him feeling something. And then it turns into he got hit going for a rebound with Kevon Looney, and people are like, well, that couldn't possibly be a concussion. I think that's the thing with Stephen A. Smith, where he's like, I was not like I have the exact quote here. I was in no way minimizing the seriousness of a concussion. I was questioning whether Anthony Davis really had one, considering the play I saw and other hits I have seen him absorb. And that is, none of us have any idea. We have no idea what the level of severity is.
Earlier.
Yeah. And I had to your point about Bam Adebayo and Julius Randle last night, the beginning of that the game. Randle takes a shot in the first play of the game, or second play of the game, looking for a rebound. And you're like, oh, I don't know, just looks like a little bit of shrapnel and going for a rebound. And then Randall's eye is like puffed up like, he was in 12 rounds with Rocky. And you're like, oh, okay, that was much more serious than I realized. And that happened in the first 2 minutes of the game. And of course, that's going to impact what comes afterwards. So all that to say, we don't necessarily know how severe something is watching it from the stands or even on TV. And I think that he is somebody that has lost the benefit of the doubt in the eyes of a lot of pundits, fans, maybe other players, maybe other coaches, as you're talking about, because there has been like instances before where it looked like it wasn't all that serious. And then, it seemed like he felt it was that serious and then it wasn't. But with head injuries are different, man. I mean, like you can say there's maybe some ineffable lack of toughness that you think you project onto Anthony Davis, but you'd like to think that at this point we'd be smarter and maybe a little more cautious about head injuries. Maybe we aren't. That's a disappointment if that's the case. Not like to tisk and lecture anybody who's reacting in real time to something where they don't have all the information, but you'd like to think that we would be a little more careful about that moving forward. And more than anything else, you'd like to hope that Anthony Davis is in fact fine and able to get back on the court because he is fine and not because they really need him for a game 6.
There you go. So last night, a little bit of a quiet energy about 10 minutes before tip-off at MSG. To the point where the Heat in 5 thing started to feel a little good. And I remember you turned to me in the press box and said, there's some guys out there getting their final warm-ups up, crowd trickling in, getting ready to sing the national anthem. And Dan Devine with his hair that's way longer than I remembered it being because it's stuffed behind a hat.
It's got performance enhancing, hair product. That's what's happening here.
And I hadn't seen it since game 1.
Hair growth hormone.
You said to me, do you think we're going to see anyone off the bench that hasn't played yet? Think we're going to get a little bit of a extended rotation? And I looked out there and I saw Derrick Rose and his beautiful mane of long dreads to keep on the long hair conversation. I saw Evan Fournier with every time I see that man and his just striking leg tattoo sleeve. What a detailed piece of artwork that is. I really did not foresee. I thought maybe we could get one guy, and then Jalen Brunson and Quentin Grimes played all 48 minutes.
Right.
It was after the first quarter. You tapped me on the elbow and said, "Hey, these guys haven't come out yet." Halftime. Oh, still 24 minutes each. 24. End of the third quarter, and then Brunson and Grimes were both asked post game if they knew if it was premeditated, and they kind of chuckled and said, like, when you're hunched over and your hands are on your knees and there's like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you kind of just start to realize, well, I'm not getting yanked from this one. So pretty, nice Iron Man performance in those two. The Knicks overcome a terrible first quarter where they were down 24-14, big 18-2 run to start the second. The theme of my observation from last night was just kind of like a overall resiliency. Like every time the Heat did something, the Knicks found a way to bounce back, which obviously they did at large, staving off elimination in that 3-1 back against the wall environment. So kudos to the Knicks. I mean, if they had just kind of rolled over, and I mean, it was also funny with the new Twitter algorithms like coming back on the subway like we were talking about and scrolling through the feeds, like seeing like Jonathan Macri and other Knicks people online's thoughts and feelings from like the second quarter after the game
right.
was a nice little time capsule. But I mean, maybe this is too big picture-y and like trying to draw lines to offseason and transaction tinkery type stuff. But I mean, to go out with like a whimpering 5-game loss at home, I think is something. I mean, look what happened with Milwaukee. That's all you need to know. So for a situation, I'm not saying Tibbs would have been in a head coaching, hot seat if that was the circumstance either. But like he was at a certain point in time, definitively. Like there was the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes that opened this whole season. They got this Jalen Brunson free agency coup, win a first round series in pretty convincing fashion in 5 games on their own, side of things against Cleveland. If like they had just ended the year flat and splattered on the Madison Square Garden floor because Jimmy Butler did Jimmy Butler things, like I think that would have been pretty important context heading into this summer. And to now like go back to Miami with really, I mean, obviously the Knicks want to keep playing, like they want to win game 6 and have game 7 and prove all those raucous New Yorkers correct as they were heading down the escalators back out to 7th and 8th Avenue. But I think at this point, like I left that arena last night thinking Jalen Brunson is the truth, and he plays a style of game that while he was 4th in crunch time scoring in the regular season and clearly is a very ball dominant figure in the current structure of New York's offense, like there's room to build off of whatever he's doing, which is pretty damn good. So I just think, to me, like big picture macro perspective, that was my takeaway that from the Knicks win over the Heat, that like this is something far different from when they made the playoffs and it was a breakthrough and the Garden was freaking out and then Trae Young stomped all over their hopes and dreams. Like you won a first round series, you weren't lunch meat in the second. I think that's kind of my takeaway here. What did you leave the Garden in your head and in your fingertips as you started pounding the keys for 17 hours straight?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It allows the sort of broader perspective to remain intact. Like if you go back to September, October, and you said the Knicks are going to have a top 3 or 4 offense, they're going to be a top 6 team in the East. They're going to win, what was it, 40? Was it 40? They're going to win that mid to high 40s in games. They're going to win a playoff series. They're going to look good in the second round. I think people would have been like, that is ahead of schedule and a big surprise.
It's a win.
And the specific nature in which they did it, where it's like Julius Randle will bounce back to all-star, all-NBA form again. Jalen Brunson will play. He won't make those things, but he will play like an all-star, like an all-NBA caliber player, and be somebody that you can rely on in the playoffs. And maybe not all of these young guys, but the guys that you have sort of put together in this rotation, Quentin Grimes, RJ Barrett, these guys that people were wondering why did New York not just fork them over in a Donovan Mitchell deal, do whatever they needed to do to get him in-house. Listen, maybe the counterfactual is if they bring Mitchell in, they're a 55-win team and they're better equipped to have their offense not go in the toilet in the series. I don't know, but Quentin Grimes playing 48 minutes of two-way ball last night was one of the main reasons the Knicks were able to win. RJ Barrett having, I think, 20 or more in 6 of his last 7 games and looking really aggressive and getting downhill, getting to a shot. Clutch free throws last night. That was a huge reason they won that game. The Knicks are now able, whatever comes next, they're able to go into the postseason, or into the offseason rather, and say, all of the stuff we had to make a big superstar deal or put a package together, we still got all of that. And we feel confident in our 26 and under core of guys that we've got, that they can get better and we can continue to build with what we have. And there's value in some of these young guys. It's not just that the Knicks fan base has pumped them up into better assets than they really are. Like Emmanuel Quickley was a finalist for 6th Man of the Year. Obi Toppin made a huge impact last night when he came in, completely flipped the energy in the building, started the second quarter. Grimes is a two-way wing. Barrett has the capacity to be a two-way wing and an additional complementary scorer as well. So all that allows you to say, we fought. And then the bounce back from Julius Randle after game 4 in Miami, saying maybe they just won it more. And I didn't view that as Julius Randle capitulating or sulking. It was you're searching for an answer as to why the thing you did all season long, you didn't do when it mattered most. And he was sort of at a loss. I don't know. Maybe they wanted it more. For the bounce back from that to be, the Knicks could have absolutely folded like a cheap suit at the end of that first quarter. And for them to fight, to get back in the fight, and for Randle too, to shake off a bad start and play really well for the next 3 quarters on the offensive end, at least, that mattered. It matters to show there is something building there. Maybe it all, washes away on the beach in Miami in a couple of days, but it will, if that's going to happen, it will happen because the Heat beat them, not because they just kind of, crumbled and fell down. And I think that is an important thing for an organization that's looking to build something sustainable moving forward, as opposed to, the kind of the flash in the pan feeling of a couple of years ago, as you mentioned.
Especially in that I saw it at the end of game 4 on Monday night on television. I was really surprised at how it seemed like Brunson and Josh Hart were kind of unraveling at the hand of non-calls that they were expecting to be calls. And you had a very kind online commenter suggest that you were also not paying fair enough attention to the officiating. And look, there's a reason I went to the replay center to hang out with Monty McCutcheon. I get why these calls are far more higher scrutinized in the postseason than some random game 43 on a Wednesday night. I totally understand. But it's still very, very important to not, as a player, as a coach, to not have that factor into your mental fortitude of accomplishing the task at hand. And one of the things that I think propped Jalen Brunson's skill set to get onto this stage was that steady, calm, collected floor general, persona that he's had dating back to 2 titles at Villanova. And I mean, he's from the Philadelphia area. I don't know if I've shared this in the podcast. It's not relevant at all for my relationship with this guy, because we don't know each other at all. He was on my 3rd grade Sixers summer camp team when he was 2 years younger. So I've followed. I've definitely kept an eye on Brunson, since throughout his high school career and on Nova, and I've just never seen him kind of show that weakness before that I saw down in South Beach. And Josh Hart is always this upbeat, positive Energizer Bunny, and we were struck by watching him rip off his headband and run into the tunnel at the end of the first quarter last night. And Brunson had this whole sequence where he was trying to back down Kyle Lowry, and then he got blocked. He thought he got fouled, and he was yelling at the ref, and Tibbs called timeout, and Julius Randle had to get off the bench and literally bear hug the guy to prevent him from going after the ref. And then when it all seemed like that pot could have boiled over, they just chilled and they turned the tide and they've gone that big run. And it's honestly more, maybe this is total, BS, but to me it seems more impressive to be able to like right that wrong and steady that ship than like it would have been if there was never a crack in the armor or a moment of taking her eye off the ball. But the fact that like that's just going to happen to everyone at some point, like LeBron losing his mind up in TD Garden earlier in the regular season, like that happens, So the ability, like Monty Williams said this when I was in Denver on Tuesday night after the game, where the Suns, he said, like the whole point of this is to like know your so that way, like when you trust it and you're comfortable with it, when like it's hard to be comfortable and hard to trust it, you can still do it. You can still run your sets and you can still, do your defensive strategy to your utmost ability and like trust that your process will work. So the fact that this young Knicks team, I mean, they're not like the Oklahoma City Thunder, but they're also not the Warriors. The fact that they kind of melted a little, but then put themselves back together again, I thought was pretty impressive.
Yeah, two things on that. One, RJ Barrett spoke about that after the game, said, when the Heat made their run, the quote was, we were able to just be ourselves. We were able to still play with confidence, make some huge plays and finish the game out. And that, to your point, that comes from knowing who you are and what you want to be, what you want to get to, how you want to attack. There is, the game plan aspects of, Brunson attacking, whether it's Duncan Robinson or, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, wherever he feels like he has a mismatch, in trying to sort of space the floor and coordinate opportunities for him to be able to get to that ISO hunt one-on-one sort of game. The flip side of it, though, is the Heat are basically, they made the whole team out of that kind of poise and steadiness and not getting, like, they go down 19 and it's just chip until it's 103-101 with 2.5 minutes left, right? So the end, if not for some shaky shooting, and the Heat were unsustainably hot against Milwaukee. They've cooled down significantly the last couple of games, but they were getting some wide open looks pretty much every time they put
wide open.
Yeah, and I don't know what the tracking data says about like how many of them had a Knick defender not within 8 feet or whatever the final sort of advanced numbers on it wound up being, but the looks were like crystal clear on a lot of those plays. And you had Kevin Love go 0 for 7. Gabe Vincent, I think, went 0 for 3. They were 3 for 19, I believe, in the first half from 3, and that like opened up the door for the Knicks to kind of build up that lead and get back in the game first and then build a lead. And I think the Heat are, they stay even keeled too, man. They're not gonna capsize as a result of that. Jimmy Butler, after the game, they asked, how did you feel about the quality of the looks you guys got? If this game played out again in South Beach, do you feel sort of comfortable with it? And he just said, like, I'll take that, every time. I feel really, every time we're going to continue to take those shots. We're going to make those shots. I don't think offense was our problem. So they need to clean up their fouling. They need to tighten up their defensive work, especially on Brunson. And they allowed way too many paint touches for the Knicks. That was one way that the Miami was able to kind of take control of the series, was shutting out keeping the Knicks outside, forcing them to take a bunch of jumpers. They got back into the game, as you noted last night, playing more zone, trying to force the Knicks into taking more contested jumpers. That's a recipe for them that has been successful. The Knicks were more aggressive in getting to their game last night. Doesn't mean that the Heat can't reverse course on Friday. And then, Jimmy has to be Jimmy. I think that's kind of maybe the more interesting thing. He had the nasty ankle roll game 1. The Knicks don't attack him. He misses game 2. He comes back in game 3 and has looked more or less like himself the next couple of games. Great all-around game from Jimmy last night. 19 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds, the blocks, the steals, the off-ball defense, the way he's gumming up
One
the
block
works.
on Brunson, where it was like 3 incredible NBA high-level athlete skill level plays where Brunson just shook Duncan Robinson. Like, I mean, he's hunting Robinson for a reason, but still, like, very strong handle, breaks free. Butler just soars to swat his shot, starts to break. Butler misses. Bam Adebayo comes flying out of nowhere. That's one in the press box where it's hard not to go, whoa, what a play.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, he was everywhere in those first 9 minutes or so of the fourth quarter, and it played a massive role in them coming back. Then the last 2.5 minutes, though, like, and there's that push and pull between playing the right way, making the right play, and needing your guy to take over. And Jimmy was so electric taking over against Milwaukee in round one, and then he didn't get a shot in the last 2.5 minutes last night. He was set up Duncan Robinson for a wide open three that he missed. He was created some opportunities for other guys, but he was not able to close there, or he just didn't. Not that he's not able to. That's not the way that the game went. And after the game, he talked about, that's the forever like, I'm not really a scorer anyways. It's like, yeah, well, you average like 37 a game in round one to knock out the 1 seed. So we know you can score. And him saying he feels comfortable with playing that right way, setting up his guys. If we make 1 or 2 shots, I don't think that the question gets asked the same way, yada, yada, yada. But it's also Jimmy played the entire second half, 42 plus minutes. You wonder if maybe, and Grimes was in his face the entire time. They kept the Knicks were doing everything they could to make it more difficult on him, throwing extra pressure at him at times, throwing double teams at him. He was making plays out of it, but that took him out of his scoring game. You wonder if we're reaching a point where all of the minutes and all of the pressure on the injured leg is starting to wear him down a little bit. And if that's, and all the defensive responsibility he has is starting to wear him down a little bit. And if that's the case, and you get into another one of those close and late situations, is it going to have to be somebody else making those plays? And, where does Miami go? If you, all you might need, if you're the Knicks, is 1 or 2 of those things to go your way late in game 6, where they didn't go your way in game 4. And then you're talking about maybe, get home to game 7 is still in play. So a lot up in the air still. But I'm with you. I kind of expected we'd be talking today, a postmortem about what the Knicks need to do this summer. And, not today, not yet.
Not today. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll talk about yesterday's All-NBA teams and a couple of more takes for our listeners who want opinions about things tangentially related to basketball. Stay tuned. Welcome back to No Cap Room on the Ball Don't Lie podcast network. The NBA announced the All-NBA teams on Wednesday at 7 o'clock, right before New York was successful in staving off elimination. Your first team, Dan Devine, not your first team because you voted, but
right.
The proverbial
the collective
our first team. Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which, according to ESPN's Tim McMahon, players with 4 first-team All-NBA selections before turning 25, Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, Tim Duncan, and the great Max Zaslavsky that everyone knows.
What is your favorite fact about Max Zaslavsky, Jake? I know you're a big historian. You're a student of the game. Tell me your favorite thing about Max Zaslavsky.
Well, I'm pulling up his basketball reference page, and his nickname is Slots.
Nice.
He's from Brooklyn. He's born in Brooklyn. He played at Thomas Jefferson High School, so he's a Brooklyn boy. Shout out to all Brooklyn boys here and far. I think the biggest ramification of everything, of course, is Jaylen Brown landing on the second team. Mm-hmm. He is there alongside Jimmy Butler, Nikola Jokic, Stephen Curry, and one Donovan Mitchell, who, before we get to Jalen, Donovan Mitchell quote tweeted, I believe, the announcement with 3 simple letters, not LOL, not SMH, but FOH. And he received a bit of color and response. Our producer, John Denaro, said he plays no defense, so take that.
As opposed to Luka Doncic, perennial all defensive team candidate.
There you go. So any thoughts, any feelings on those first 2 teams on Mitchell before we kind of get into the Jaylen Brown of it all?
Well, the first thing is we immediately have to issue a correction. John Gennaro informs us that he was talking about Luka not playing any defense. So, fair point there. Sorry, John, we put you on blast for no apparent reason.
Got it. Well, Donovan's defensive tenacity definitely came into question in the playoffs. So
Yes, I think that's a
Hard,
fair thing.
hard to
And
blame us for confusing.
that's true. Really, it's nobody's fault at the end of the day. My main takeaway is just, Luka making first team on a sub 500 team that didn't even make the play-in tournament I get it. I get it, but it feels a little icky to me. It's why I did not have him on first team. I did have Mitchell over him, so not
You're on the side of Spida.
not FO me. That's good. LOLSMH, not DAN. That's good. But the SGA is kind of an interesting one, just because this was such a breakthrough season for him. We've talked about it, multiple times on the show. And he was not there. The Thunder were not dramatically better record wise, all told, than the Mavericks were, but they did make the play-in tournament. They won a play-in game. They had an opportunity to make the postseason. And SGA is the primary driver of that. It gets richly deserved recognition. I think maybe surprising a lot of people that it got all the way up to the first team. But and I think I saw it was maybe the second Canadian ever to make first team after Steve Nash, which is a wild thing to be true. Maybe one of these years we'll get like the full complement of Canadian dudes on the Team USA for the FIBA tournament, or on Team Canada rather, for the FIBA tournaments, and we'll get to see what that new sort of golden generation of young talent looks like. Will be kind of neat. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The biggest potential ripple effect thing of all the teams is Jaylen Brown making second team All NBA, because that now makes him eligible for a Supermax contract extension, just like Tatum is also eligible for a Supermax contract extension. And the numbers this is where you're going to start getting sick to your stomach with some of these numbers. If you're like the kind of fan who looks at it and says, wait, how much did Michael Jordan make in his career? And it's going to be like slivers of percentages of what.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't
I'm not saying
you're just providing air for that commentary though.
Well, but there are people reasonable, not crazy people who look at it and say the numbers are so astronomical as to feel like divorced from reality to me. And I think
they are definitely divorced from reality. They're definitely some type of Succession type. These guys are playing on a different sphere of whatever, gases and solids and whatever than we are.
Yeah, the line, it was the Kendall Roy line, like, it's enough to make you lose faith in capitalism. You can kind of say anything. There's a little bit of that in this. But Jaylen Brown is now eligible for, according to ESPN's Bobby Marks, a 5-year Supermax for him that would top out at $295 million. And one for Tatum, who would not be eligible to sign his until July of 2024. But Tatum now eligible for one that could go as high as $318 million. It's just, again, astronomical numbers. And the things that the distillation for the Celtics as a team building enterprise is like, at base, you've got to decide, just, do you want to commit that much money to both of these guys? And the more pressing, immediate conversation is with Jaylen Brown, because he's eligible for the new deal this summer. He's only under contract for one more season. He can become an unrestricted free agent in the summer of 2024. And the personal component of it, not just the business side, is like, if you don't offer him the full boat right now, does a guy who you've had kind of in trade rumors constantly, and granted for superstar players, for guys like Kawhi and AD and Kevin Durant, but a guy who's been in trade rumors basically his whole career, who's spoken on the record multiple times this season about the frustrations that he's experienced in Boston, that kind of stuff. If you don't offer him everything right off the bat, is that, as a soft interpersonal thing, going to maybe be viewed as a slight, as something where that's like a low balling that maybe gets him a little closer to out the door in free agency. But then if you don't try to negotiate on any of those points and try to knock the percentage of the max down or whatever, how comfortable are you committing to $110 million a year or $120 million a year for just those two guys moving forward? It's a kind of a fascinating question.
Especially under the new CBA, where the parameters are making it harder and harder to build expensive teams that can be repeatedly contending year after year after year. Golden State, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, even this Miami Heat team, the Clippers. There's going to be a lot of teams that have a lot of tough decision making to make, to the point where I'm expecting, I've heard it in plenty of conversations I've had with people on the league the last couple of weeks. I think there could be like kind of like a mini trade deadline when with the league calendar being whatever exactly it flips over. I don't know if it's exactly 5:59 p.m. on June 30th, but so that week after the draft, before free agency, until the final horn when the calendar year is going to be over and the new rules come into effect on all of them, but some. I think there's going to be some teams shuffling their decks around, dumping salary, moving salaries, exchanging two contracts for one, turning one contract into two. Right now, every front office, especially the ones who are going to be hit the hardest by the second apron, who are already projected to be there or very close to that threshold, they're all having meetings on a weekly basis. Some teams pseudo daily, trying to figure out, okay, there's this game we've been playing with a certain set of rules, and now there's like a little bit of a different one, and like the ramifications of us. I feel like I say that word all the time. Ramifications of us potentially making some wrong moves here, a la 2016, where it's a different landscape. It's not the issues of lack of cap smoothing, but like when it comes to team building, one decision now can really hamstring you for 2 years and vice versa. So I feel like Boston has to be roped into that conversation, especially when, look, I don't know if Jaylen Brown's going to get traded. I don't know if he is going to want to get traded. They're still very much locked into a series at Boston right now. But there's also bigger or other like shifting tectonic plates with the Celtics too, in that their former head coach who led them to the finals and handpicked basically the entire coaching staff is now at the Houston Rockets. And there's definitely expectations around the coaching community that he will be at least taking a handful of staff members from the Celtics to Houston. Will Hardy's right-hand man already left to go to Utah. I think that's been an underrated aspect of this Celtics playoff run when David Stoudemire departed too to become Georgia Tech's head coach. Like there's going to be some changes here. You know, Steven Silas is being photographed at practice, and he's a name to look out for. Frank Vogel is a name people keep talking about as a potential addition to that staff. So there's this. The Celtics are not going to look the same regardless. And the fact that Jaylen Brown has at least said a couple of things publicly that would lead other teams to believe he would have potential interest in playing elsewhere, like the thought of one get out of jail free card or just one lever to pull to kind of offset a lot of those tricky cap calculations moving forward could be a massive return for this guy. It's just something I think Boston has to at least consider, to your point about one. I mean, I think the answer is you pay the guy, but to figure out exactly how, and look, every single player right now and their agents who are worth their salt, they're operating with the strategy of take the money right now. We can always run later. So right. Without talking to his team, I can make a strong assumption that that's going to be what they want, right? I mean, why wouldn't they want the maximum salary, and why wouldn't they want it to take it and then still potentially say, hey, we're going to be showing ourselves out. We want to be traded here, because we talked about it here on the show before. Like, free agency just like isn't really like a marquee thing anymore. There aren't too many guys who are just taking meetings and flying around and being courted. Like Kevin Durant chose Phoenix, Anthony Davis chose the Lakers, James Harden basically chose Brooklyn and then chose Philadelphia. Like the list goes on. So it'll be something to consider. It'll be something to monitor. I think it's way too early now to really start to align the stars and figure out what's going to happen, because they're still very much locked into this series of Philadelphia, like we said. They could lose tonight, and it could all start a big rumor mill and an echo chamber. What's going on up in Eastern Massachusetts? But for now, it's just we had to get to this point. We had to understand what exactly his contract situation was going to be, what it could be, and the fact that 7 p.m. last night, Wednesday, the reveal had him on an All NBA team. I mean, there will be ripple effects that maybe we're not going to see yet because they haven't surfaced yet. But like that first quake, that first moment, like it was felt. People around the league were definitely looking forward to finding out what that answer was going to be.
There more to be revealed on that, but I think we got to move forward from the All NBA stuff to what I think we should be calling this is no longer takes from the couch, because you have moved from the couch to various seats on airplanes all across this fine land of ours. And now I think we have to go with a different title for this segment. And Jake, what's the name of the segment now?
I just want to be clear that I did not come up with this.
What was that?
Our lovely production team has decided to label this recurring segment Hot Jakes. So I'll begrudgingly take it. I want the people to know that this is not me trying to push an agenda that I find myself above average in attraction.
The People's Insider would never put himself in a position where he's trying to label himself something different and above. Not at all. That's not how he gets down.
Especially when I used to definitely think I was hot, and that was 20 pounds ago. And I'm an objective observer of basketball and of life and myself, so I'm not in my prime. I'm just not. I'm like LeBron. I'm hanging on. I'm hanging on as long as I can.
Not for nothing. I'm like LeBron might be the hottest Jake of all. We might need to hold on to that one, especially using it as a way to sort of diminish yourself, self-deprecation. I'm like LeBron, man. Okay.
Well, there's an unnamed. I'll protect their identity. A member of our Yahoo Sports NBA team who went pretty at length in our Tuesday Google Meet to basically say LeBron is bad right now. So
blind items, my goodness.
There you go. All right, to the task at hand. I'm gonna go from basketball to least basketball, and from not my takes to my takes, because we have a submission. We have a submission from, if I butchered the title, I'm so sorry, but the head of podcasting, I believe, Brett Rader. He says he's tired of players waiting and holding the ball after the buzzer at the end of a quarter, at the end of a half. I don't think it really happens at the end of the shot clock anymore. This is a subject that I have some type of intimate familiarity with, being that I wrote something for Sports Illustrated years ago about the idea of grenades, where players,
right,
as that clock is winding down, they just swing it out of the corner of their eye to an unsuspecting teammate because they don't want the shot clock violation to fall and blemish their record. Even though the big funny element and kicker to that is that if you're holding the ball when it's a shot clock violation or the end of the quarter, it's not on you. It's a team penalty. So
right, you're not your individual turnover.
Yeah. So a lot of players are ducking this thing that doesn't even exist, which is, to me, is funny in its own right. So there's been a lot of team internal data, including the glass, take out those incidents from metrics. Those data points are scrubbed from the field of information. But our producer, John Gennaro, has another idea. He wants to treat any shot in the last 5 seconds of a quarter as if a shooter is fouled. If it goes in, it's great. It counts and it helps your percentage. If it doesn't count as a shot. And the whole crowd just got to ooh and ah at your prayer soaring through the heavens and clanking off the backboard and nothing more. So Dan Devine, who dabbles in the fine art of analytics far more than I do, what say you?
I don't know, man. I feel like my brain just got sprained because my first thought was if it doesn't go in, if the last 5 seconds of the fourth quarter, if it doesn't go in, does it not count? I think about all the statistics where it's well, this player, or when you look at the scores within 3 points in the last X seconds of the game. Like who's made the most clutch shots, the most like mega clutch shots, who has the worst percentage in those situations. If those don't count, then how is, StatMuse and StatHead and all of the wonderful statistics. Justin Kubatko at Statitudes, our partner there at Yahoo Sports. Like, how will all these people come up with these great arcane stats that we can then, get social media engagement out of and plug into our stories to get us to the next paragraph? I feel like, having something that's going to short circuit our ability to stack one number against another is a makes it harder for people like me. But I mean, I don't know, man. The main thing is fortune should favor the bold, right? Like, not to be a crypto salesman, but like fortune should favor the bold, and let's not penalize people for trying to make a 70-footer before the shot clock goes up, before the game buzzer goes off. Find something exciting, maybe tilt the momentum of a game. Yes, whatever encourages people to do that without having to clutch their own numbers, so much the better. And I don't know if John's idea is better or not, but any idea that gets more wild ass heaves that occasionally sometimes result in like a ball boy getting beaned or going 15 rows into the crowd, also an entertainment value plus. So let's go with whatever boosts those numbers up. Let's go with that.
So moving on, which this could have easily been just amended to takes from the road instead of takes from the couch and not Hot Jakes, but we're in the Hot Jakes world now.
Hot Jakes plays. We're going to stick with Hot Jakes.
Out there. It's the toothpaste is out of the tube, and how come there's no? This is not what I was planning to say, but when life gives you lemons, make lemonade thing. How come there's no, like, when the toothpaste is out of the tube, brush your teeth? Like, there needs to be some type of further illustration of that one. But
does there?
Maybe.
Does there need?
It doesn't need to be, but it was there. It was on the table, and I took it. Okay, so Denver Tuesday. I hadn't been to Ball Arena, I believe, since pre-pandemic. And look, every arena is different. That's part of the joy, I think, of the sport. It's not like baseball where parks are, literally configured differently, but the different aesthetic, the different vibe, the different scene, the different crowds, add some type of element for sure of, the civic trust, the community aspect. We're doing this in front of our town for the people. I always like to take pulse of that type of change of environment from city to city, arena to arena.
Yeah, tell you Denver, what's different about where you're watching the game than from one place to another. Give you a sense of the vibe of the city.
For sure. Denver, I think the big headline topic A talking point about the Nuggets home arena is the altitude, right?
Right.
And it's real. I feel it even just walking up the stairs to the media section. The thing that I was so taken by is that the Nuggets are basically throwing a rave while a game's going on. And I'm not into it because your boy's been known to frequent parts of Brooklyn where that happens.
Gonna put a pin in that. Gonna come back to that sometime. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're not hiding anything. And look, like, typically there's this marriage of basketball and hip hop that's been, sanctimonious harmony for many, many a year.
I don't think you used that word right, but that's fine. Let's keep moving.
What did I use incorrectly?
Sanctimonious, I think, has a negative connotation.
Does it? Oh my God. Now we're going to live fact check this right now. Sanctimonious, the act of making or declaring something holy. Yeah, holy matrimony. That's what I was trying to.
I don't know about that. Anyway, all right. So there's a marriage of hip hop and the NBA.
Yeah,
maybe sanctimonious making a show of being morally superior to other people.
Different definitions for different people. I don't know. Choose your facts and use them wisely.
No, words mean things. Sorry. Okay,
but words have different meanings, semantics.
Sure. Okay.
It's the art of writing, twisting and playing with the boundaries and the limits of the language.
Yeah, some truths are objective, and that's what that word means. Anyway, there's a marriage between hip hop and basketball.
As someone who loves basketball and very much enjoys house music, EDM, fill in your choice of genre here. I never put the 2 and 2 together before. And it's like a new thing. Like I mentioned it to some Nuggets people, and they were like, "Yeah, we're trying something out this year." And it's also interesting because like Denver is not a place where people are from. Like,
Okay.
apologies to the few people who are from Denver, but like, it's a transplant city. Like everyone there is from Chicago and like the greater New York area, and likes to go skiing and snowboarding. Michael Malone said this after the game. He said, because the Nuggets are 6-0 at home, and like honestly, being there, no matter what happens tonight, after we record this here at downtown Phoenix, I feel like it's going to be hard to see the Suns beat Denver in front of this raucous, ravey crowd at the altitude. Excuse me. And like they're 6-0 there. It's been a thing. They've had the best home record in the league, I believe, over the last 5 years, Michael Malone said. And like it was a conversation he had after his first year with the business staff of like, you got to build something for the people to want to come to. And apparently it's a rave. Like the lights are flashing. There's just dubstep in between timeouts. Even like, the Garden has the patented organ for the dun 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 dun, like defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it had a little like electric vibe to it in Denver. I was so struck by it. Never seen anything like it. I spent the first 3 quarters kind of like questioning if I should be liking it, if I was like doing something wrong, like if I like every fiber of my being was being like, this is not it, man. This is not how this sport is meant to be typecast. But at the end of the third quarter, I don't know if they do this at every quarter, but at the end of the third quarter, Denver like pulls down the lights and they shoot these spotlights onto the 2-team huddles. And they basically build up to a massive drop where the whole fans are like holding up a flashlight phone. I mean, the place went nuts. It was so unique. I don't know. I'm going to end my storytelling and just say, are you down to go to a Nuggets rave with me next season?
so this was all an invitation. This was all just a long run up to the invitation. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm washed and not a raver, but of course, the prospect of what I'm thinking is that at some point I'm going to be looking at Nikola Jokic and imagining a giant marshmallow on his head, or Michael Malone with the dead mouse, helmet on. Can we get how can we further integrate EDM with the Denver Nuggets basketball experience? I don't know. That it all sounds a little wild to me, but once you said that they actually do drop the beat at some point, because that's the biggest thing. You're interminably waiting for the beat to drop. At some point, the beat must drop. And so for it actually to come,
Andy Samberg short Lonely Island clip where he's like, oh, no.
Yes, right, exactly. Which is the experience of trying to guard Nikola Jokic, of course. Waiting for the beat to drop.
There you go. Also, Jokic, Malone was saying this at some point before Jokic's post-game availability, how like people don't understand that he's funny. I don't understand how people don't understand that Jokic is funny. This dude might, and it's also like, maybe I said this on the show here before too, like Sixers coaches were always telling me back in the process years how impressive it was for Joel Embiid to be so funny and like not his native language.
Sure, right.
Jokic is the same way, but Jokic like uses his language barrier as a comedic weapon in such a like natural way. He's hysterical, and the whole flip the ball to Ishbia before his pregame warm-up thing. If Jokic wants to rave, I mean, that's why he's the one who, if he's the catalyst for the environment, and I'm not saying he is. I'm just playing off of your imagery that you gave me. I'm all for it because I feel like he'd thrive in any environment. He seems like a fun-loving. I can see the floor, whether it's the court or any arena. I can pick and choose, move my own pace, and bob my head along to whatever I need to do. So
Denver Nuggets horse rave. We need Denver Nuggets horse rave, and Jake and I will be there next season. Sponsored by Yahoo Sports. That's the takeaway from this episode. Denver Nuggets horse rave, sponsored by our bosses, and we're going to fly out there. That's what's going to happen.
There you go. So again, for those who have not listened to me and my itinerary all episode long, Denver Tuesday, Manhattan Wednesday here in Phoenix now. A lot of playing time. And I am a very good sleeper on planes. That's why, I mean, maybe to go off of our ravey point, like people have said I'm crazy for doing this itinerary. I would just say I'm a degenerate. But I'm like very good at sleeping in public and sleeping on planes. I got my neck pillow from Iceland. That's lasted me like 8 years. It's like Tempur-Pedic. It works like a charm. So part of the sleep on the plane thing though to me is I need to like stretch my feet out under the seat in front of me. And I also like to take my shoes off. But this is a PSA to anyone who then like walks around the plane with your shoes off and goes into the bathroom. You are disgusting and unsanitary and crazy. Taking your shoes off at your seat to like let your feet breathe while you sleep, I think, is very much in bounds. Here's my take.
Okay.
Every plane ride, you get and look, I fully respect and appreciate the responsibility that flight attendants have, especially in a post-pandemic world where it was a little frightening for the flight attendants out there for a while with differences of opinions and whatnot, let's say. So, and their job there is not to serve. It's there to protect. The serving is like an ancillary benefit. So I get all that. I respect. I'm putting them on their proper pedestal. But the thing about how you need to keep a backpack or whatever little bag you have that can fit under the seat in front of you, where your feet go for takeoff and landing, because, quote, you need to keep the space clear for the off chance of an emergency, is so illogical to me, in that you're telling me in the state of emergency, I'm not going to be able to quickly throw this small bag where I have put things that I've deemed essential enough to bring across the country with me on my back for quick mobile accessibility. Like, why would that prevent any, like, why do I need to sacrifice like the 30 minutes of sleep from like when it's suddenly okay to put your bag in between your chair and the seat in front of you? Why is this such a, like, can people not just lift the bag and then tuck it and run like they're catching a screen pass on like a curl up the sideline? Like, why? Like, I've done this before. I've put this stuff in this bag to have everything I need on my person. So pretty much if there is an emergency, this is like the ideal thing to have right there. That's basically, you just see what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, first off, I kind of stopped listening after you talked about taking your shoes off, you savage. Like, and then once you turned that into a lengthy preamble about how much respect you have for flight attendants, and then we're like, but how could you possibly ask me to put a bag under my seat or under the seat in front of me? Man, like, the rules work a little different up there, man. I don't know what to tell you. There's not a whole lot of, everybody doesn't have infinite space. Everybody does not have your ice in the veins under pressure capacity to just grab something quick and run in the event of, like, I don't know, a water landing or losing cabin pressure. I respect your self-evaluation that leads you to believe that you would be, completely icy under pressure in all situations. But there's a whole lot of other kinds of people on the plane, small people, old people, children. They don't necessarily always have the same, ability to think on the fly and, in live action that you do. So maybe the rules have to be there for everybody who's not quite as elite a flyer as Jake Fisher.
I'm not saying I'm an elite flyer. I'm saying
more than any of that, though. Keep your damn shoes on. They don't need to breathe until you get to your destination, and then they can breathe in your hotel room all you want. I would suggest you not let them breathe at the Footprint Center, even though it's in the name. Keep them on at work. Show some respect show the same level of respect that you have for the flight attendants to the people that are around you, and maybe you'll get to your final destination as comfortably and as easily as possible.
Well, I feel attacked that you're just assuming my feet smell. That's number one. Number two, this is not a me thing about the bag. I feel like in today's society where pretty much everyone under the age of 80 has had ample access to that moment where you're done with your laptop, you slam it shut, you throw it into your. I just slammed my face into the microphone as I slammed my proverbial laptop shut and my hands underneath it. You slam the laptop shut, you slip it into the laptop sleeve of your backpack, you zip up the thing, you toss it around your shoulder in like 0.3 nanoseconds. Like, I feel like there hasn't been a time and place in human history where people are more qualified in the state of an emergency to take their technological devices and their little transporty bag or all on the go and just whip it over your shoulder. I don't know. I feel like that should be something that we can all achieve and strive to achieve as a population. I just think we got to give enough people enough credit to pack up their stuff in a moment's notice. I think that's something that we're all capable of doing.
I'm glad you got that off your chest, and I never want to talk to you about this again.
Okay. Well, you don't have to talk to me again until next week when we record the next edition of No Cap Room on the Ball Don't Lie podcast network. Thanks to John Tannaro for doing all the things he does to make this show look and sound great. And a special shout out to Brett Rader for his submission to, I guess, the first edition of a segment called
Jakes.
Hot Jakes. Follow us on Twitter to see video snippets of the podcast if you don't feel like finding the full show on YouTube. But Dan would really like you to find the full show on YouTube. He has explicitly told me he has a face for YouTube. So there you go.
That's exactly right.
On Twitter, I'm at Jake L. Fisher. That's at Your Man Divine. If you've made it this far, please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Leave us a 5-star review. That'd be so great. Vince Goodwill will be back with another edition of Good Word with Goodwill on Monday. If you missed his recent episode with Marcus Thompson from The Athletic, just two absolute pros sitting back and talking hoop. It was a really, really delightful listen. My favorite of the Good Word with Goodwill so far. So definitely back listen to that. It's not outdated, even though the context was recorded recently. Just the general tenor of the conversation they had was really, really sharp on all things Golden State. So listen to that. Listen to us. Listen to us next week. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. And we'd appreciate it if you came back for another edition of No Cap Room on the Ball Don't Lie podcast network.